Hello there, my name is Jock, and welcome to my show Movies to Games, where I do the pleasure of reviewing both a movie and the game that is based on that movie. Van Helsing. Van Helsing is an action, fantasy, universal horror film that was released on May 7th, 2004, and was directed by Stephen Sommers, the man behind the Mummy trilogy. It has an all-star cast starring Hugh Jackman, Kate Beckinsale, David Wenham, and Richard Roxburgh. That's a few Australian actors. By the time of its release, it grossed over $300 million worldwide and retained over half of its actual budget that was made. And it was one of the biggest blockbusters of that year. So, I don't know, maybe lots of people were really excited to see it back then. Jeez Louise. So, enough blabbering about, let's get into this film. And hopefully tear it apart like a werewolf. The story begins with a nice homage to the original Universal horror films of the past with a black and white setting. In Transylvania, set in the year of 1887, a bunch of angry mobsters with cliched pitchforks and fire torches storm Victor Frankenstein's castle.
Frankenstein.
Sorry. Anyway, Victor Frankenstein brings his monster to life and Igor.
No, it's pronounced Igor.
Again, sorry. Betrays Frankenstein and Dracula, played by Richard Roxburgh, flat out kills him. How harsh. Anyway, the monster frickin' loses his nutter and he just runs off to the windmill and then it gets torched. That's how you start a film. 1 year later in time, we see our hero Van Helsing, played by Hugh Jackman, fighting Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in a church or cocktail, I forget, in a pretty forgettable CGI cutscene. After killing him, Van Helsing is now a wanted man, and what a coincidence! He's got amnesia. So Van Helsing is sent to the Knights of the Holy Order to Transylvania and aid the Valerius family. Valerius? I forget. Anyway, the Valerius family have vowed that they will never enter the heavens until they have destroyed Dracula, and for 9 generations they have failed. I guess 10th time's charm. And there are only 2 members of the family left, Anna and Velkin. Kate Beckinsale and Will Kemp. So when Van Helsing arrives, Dracula's brides wreak havoc across the town, and of course Van Helsing saves the townspeople and Anna whilst Carl hides somewhere. Around the nighttime, before Anna insists on taking Dracula, Van Helsing knocks her out, because reasons, and she awakens to stumble around some room and she finds her brother Velkin, who, oh no, has turned into a werewolf. I did not see that coming. Van Helsing and Anna go to Frankenstein's castle to take on Dracula, and they find out that Dracula's doing the scheme of a werewolf. He's got a werewolf. He puts him on Frankenstein's contraption, you know, how he brought the monster, Frankenstein's monster to life, and basically he uses the electricity to bring his monster bat babies to life. That's the reason. Really? And there's more to the plot, surprisingly, but I say that's good enough. For a plot line with such massive, universal horror characters, these classics, is pretty underwhelming. Simply put it, Dracula needs electricity so he can create his monster bat babies so they can come out of their cocoons. But why? I need a drink. Let's just say Dracula is really active with his brides. Yeah. Van Helsing, the main star of the show, isn't really too interesting, honestly. Sure, he looks heroic and Hugh Jackman does a decent job of playing his character, but they go with the amnesia characteristic. So we don't get any of his backstory, we don't get to know much about him, and basically Dracula in one scene tells him of his past, and we're just going, huh? It doesn't give us enough, though, for us to give a damn about him. How am I supposed to care about this character if I don't know much about him? And truthfully, in the last act, he goes full Wolverine. He's not even Van Helsing anymore. He's just Wolverine. And for a good reason too. Calm. He's helpful to some degree. He's Van Helsing's sidekick. And he creates some cool inventions for Van Helsing to use. But he's just really cliched and he has those comedic moments where they are mostly a miss. Anna Valerius, she's okay. Kate Beckinsale isn't my favorite actress, but she does an okay job for this kind of character. It's just, I wish there was less predictability about her character traits. Richard Roxburgh as Dracula. I didn't see it. I guess I've just been spoiled by Bela Lugosi and Gary Oldman, honestly. I was not convinced. He was not a convincing Dracula at all. I've seen him in TV shows and other movies, and he's a pretty good actor. It's just, Dracula? No, not Dracula. I think the sets and locations are the characters of this film. They just brim with atmosphere. I just wish that when the CGI creatures show up on the screen, that the camera wasn't so bloody immature and just shaked about the place and just went in different scene cut, just different places, and it's just just let me take my time in this world. That's what I'm asking for. Just let me take my time, and when there's an action scene, do it well. One thing this film didn't need was those tedious jump scares that you could smell from a mile away. You know, the jump scares, 1, 2, 3, bah! 1, 2, 3, bah! You know, you can time it correctly. You can tell when it's going to come. So, basically, don't use jump scares in your movie. It does not fit it one bit. You're trying to be scary. Scare us. Give us tension. Don't give us jump scares at the screen. Never do that. Tension. If you're going to make a film that is a universal horror film, take classical inspiration from the films of the past, like Dracula and Frankenstein and Son of Frankenstein and the Wolfman. You can probably tell I'm not a fan of CGI. And while it's not my favorite thing, I can admire it when it's done right and it looks seamless. I'm more of a practical person myself, but I do like the transformation of the werewolf in this film though. The costumes are all pretty good. Van Helsing's attire is without a doubt the best one in the whole film. And Anna's costume, I would say that it looks kind of like a cosplayer outfit more than an actual costume I would see in that time of era, but I'm probably just nitpicking here. Helen Silvestri composed the score, and I must say it is my favorite thing out of the whole film. Just the themes of horror, adventure, and heroism meshes really well. Van Helsing is not the best movie I've ever seen. It has plenty of flaws, and I would probably consider not watching it. But I don't know why, but I think you could find some entertainment when watching with friends, maybe, having a good laugh about it and making fun of it. I did have a good laugh at one scene, like this one. Oh, imbecile humor. It does go on for a bit too long though. This goes for about 130 minutes, over that. If they cut it by 20 to 30 minutes, then I don't think it would have dragged on for as long as it needed to. Like I said, for what it is, it's harmless, but you could just watch the classic Universal horror films from the past and have much more of a blast. You could have a marathon with those movies. So I'm going to give this movie 2.5 fingers. Actually, scratch that, 2 fingers. I'm changing my mind, 2 fingers. Oh, and here's a little game that you can play during the film. Count how many times a bolt of lightning strikes throughout the whole duration of the movie. You'll be shocked. That pun was unintentional. Van Helsing the game was developed by Sapphire Corporation and was published by Vivendi Universal. Nope, not Sierra, the cover is pretty much lying to you. It was released on the Xbox, PlayStation 2 and Game Boy Advance and was released a mere few weeks before the movie came out. So, let's find out if the game is better or if not worse than the movie. We'll find out.
In some senses, the game does follow the movie, just in a different style. Instead of going scene to scene, you're with Van Helsing every step of the way. After the first mission where you fight Mr. Hyde, it sets to the trains and bada bing bada boom, Transylvania. The certain scenarios from the film do happen in the game, like finding Frankenstein's monster in the caves, the carriage battle with Dracula's brides, the final battle. You just have to get there, instead of being planted into the situation like a stage. It doesn't mean it makes the story better. It makes it much less of a thing, mainly because there is 30% story and 70% action. But it's a video game. Is that a good excuse? No, not really. The majority of characters are in there. You got Van Helsing, Anna and Velkin, Igor, Dracula, all except for one. And that is Carl.
Yes, Carl does not make a single appearance in the game. I guess the developers knew that it was a good thing as well.
What a relief, honestly, and the characters are pretty much like how they are in the movie. What you can also do is interact with items and surroundings that add a bit of depth to the world of Van Helsing. Not much for you to care about, but enough for you to say, interesting. Moving on. I mean, you could find anything in these bookcases. Huh? A Castlevania reference? It looks decent. The visual aspect doesn't absolutely blow me away, but they look decent for the time. The character models are designed alright, they look like what they do in the movie, albeit Dracula's facial features are... Yep. As for Transylvania, it gives much more of an intriguing atmosphere than the movie ever did. That's when there's no swarm of enemies about, of course. The way some of the camera angles present the background are really invigorating, but at times it doesn't help when you're trying to grapple onto a ledge at an obscure camera shot. In the film, there wasn't really much tension. For the game, there still isn't. It does get to the point of squeezing the controller tight during a boss battle, but that's only due to the amount of damage dealt to the player. There is one tiny section where there's some tension. After briefly seeing Velkin in werewolf form for the first time, you traverse through the streets of Transylvania having no music in the background. There is no clue of when or if he is about to strike, and it keeps you on the ball. And when he does, it does catch you off guard. He briefly attacks and takes off. 'Tis sad it only lasted 30 seconds though. That could have easily been a whole level. The cutscenes are pretty brief, but continue the story reasonably well and don't interfere the gameplay too much. But the dialogue and line delivery is pretty terrible, I'm not going to lie, just listen to this.
So nice of you to drop in, my ancient friend. To what do I owe the pleasure? Let me guess. You're here to kill me.
I am, and I will.
I'm sorry. Didn't anyone tell you? I'm already dead. Murdered 4.5 centuries ago. Any idea who could have committed the crime? Gabriel? You don't remember, do you? You don't even remember your name.
You don't know who I am. You could have picked any name.
True. I could have. But you have no way of knowing that. Do you?
Perhaps I don't need to know.
Perhaps not. Then again, no one can run from their past, Gabriel. You must face the truth. You are a murderer.
No, Dracula, not a murderer.
And yes, that is Hugh Jackman and Richard Roxburgh you hear. They contributed their voices for the game. At least they got a paycheck out of it. The dialogue just seems so rushed, they're frightened that the player is going to lose interest in the game if the scene goes a tad bit longer, so they speed it up. To be honest, that's a positive for me because I did feel impatient, only because I knew the situation after watching the movie beforehand. The music? I can't remember a single track. Then again, nearly the whole game is ambiance. So basically you'll be hearing background noise, to then hear enemies screeching and howling, to finally listen to the joyful sounds of your guns going off throughout, rinse and repeat. It's best to just mute it and play some music in the background. It won't hurt at all. The gameplay does look familiar, doesn't it? The camera angles, how you use your pistols, the way you jump up as high as an Olympic athlete. I am of course referring this to a game called Devil May Cry. Simply put it, the game is Devil May Cry with a Van Helsing makeover. If you are not familiar with DMC, the game is a third-person hack-and-slash shooter, and I will admit, it's pretty fun, till you hit the 30-minute mark and realize this is all you are doing throughout the duration of this game. You can use melee weapons such as Van's blade, thingamajig from the movie, and various guns like pistols, a shotgun, a crossbow, and near the end of the game, a Gatling gun. As you progress through the game, you'll find these weapons and use them to your advantage when fighting enemies. The positive yet unrealistic thing about the guns is that they have unlimited ammo, so shoot away, shoot away. But just like Devil May Cry, these weapons have upgraded ammo as well that add more hit points towards your enemies. Its gauge goes down quick, so use it wisely. Speaking of upgrades, throughout the game you'll be collecting these green orbs which remind me of the agility orbs from Crackdown. And when you gather enough, you can purchase an upgrade on either your health, weapon upgrades, or melee moves. I honestly just focus on health because health depletes like a shot of bourbon in this game.
Like that?
Also, if scouring about the place, these purple orbs should be lying about. They upgrade Van Helsing's health, and the red orbs regenerate his health.
You're probably asking why the game lost its fun factor after 30 minutes. Honestly, 2 words. Repetitive, tedious.
The combat never changes at all, and I mostly blame it on both the enemy variety and the combat. For the enemies, they are either on the ground or above in the air, with some using melee attacks, some with projectiles, and sometimes both. You've got skeletons, gargoyles, skeletons with swords, werewolves, flying skulls, bats, statues, weird owl things, Dracula's children, and these little bastards. The variety of enemies are alright, but when it comes to the use of weapon of choice when facing enemies, there's not much variation. Don't use the crossbow on the stone gargoyles and statues, use the shotgun on skeletons for one-shot kills, and never ever use melee. Yes, you heard me right. Never use it. Unlike Devil May Cry where the combos are fluent, trying to pull off a combo finisher in Van Helsing is uncanny. The melee combat feels sort of clunky in the end. But that's not the major problem with the melee though. As you can see, the camera tilts every time you hit an enemy continually. That's a massive no-no. Don't try to be edgy with that kind of nonsense, it never works.
It's like every time I punch the air, the camera tilts like this. Does that seem fun to you?
Luckily, that does not occur every time you shoot an enemy. For the majority of my playthrough I mainly use the guns, because they have much more impact towards enemies than melee weapons, which is honestly the tedious and repetitive option. Keep on holding the X button, dodge the enemies, and you'll win. Devil May Cry balanced it out so the guns would damage an enemy, slicing off minuscule bits of health so you could focus on racking a sweet melee combo. It felt satisfying and kept the flow of the game fresh. Considering you hold a button and shoot in this game, the flow dissolves and becomes distorted. But what about the boss battles? Surely the gameplay becomes much better during them, right? Sadly, that's not the case. The following bosses you face are Mr. Hyde, Vulcan, Dracula, Igor, Dracula's Brides, and Frankenstein's monster. That's a fair amount of bosses for a video game. Too bad they are mediocre. Vulcan, I shoot, dodge, roll, melee, and repeat. You fight him 4 times. Dracula, shoot, dodge, shoot, jump, dodge, and repeat. You fight him 3 times. Igor, shoot, dodge, repeat, fight him 2 times. The Bride, shoot, dodge, 3 brides, each a separate boss. I think you get the gist of the boss battles. The fact that you fight them all more than once just pads the game out painstakingly. The Brides I understood, but the others were inexcusable.
I need a drink.
Now, there are challenges in the game that you can unlock by collecting these Easter eggs and placing them on display, which takes you to a realm of purple gates. I honestly didn't care less about the challenges. I attempted one and failed, so this section does not redeem much of anything.
Oh dear, this is going to be a difficult choice. This is like choosing between 2 different cereal boxes with each one having a different fruit in them. One having peach, the other having sultanas. And they are 4 years past the best before date. The movie, after 11 years, does have some dated CGI, and it is not one of the greatest movies out there. But there is some light entertainment to be had, considering that it is a popcorn movie. The game, on the other hand. As for the game, it's a Devil May Cry clone, and for the first 30 minutes it is fun for a bit, but after that it just becomes tedious and repetitive, considering that you shoot and dodge and roll and you fight bosses 2 to 3 times each, and it just gets repetitive and you go back to the same places that you've been to before, and what a waste of potential. Oh, and I shan't forget, I beat this game in 2 hours and 34 minutes. That's 20 minutes longer than the actual movie. So with that, I declare that the movie is the better option. Sure, there are plenty of flaws and some moments that may tick you off, but at least you can have entertainment out of this. This game, the more I think about it, the more I dislike it, sadly. So, the winner is the movie. Anywho, thank you very much for watching another episode of Movies to Games, and next time we shall be delving into the road of El Dorado, the magnificent and golden. You didn't know there was a PS game before. You didn't know there was a PS1 game, did you? Well, there is. Torah.